Let's bring in our panel, our regular grouping, Andrew Charlton, Zoe McKenzie. Great to see you both. I want to ask you, first of all, this poll that shows Peter Dutton is better placed to deal with Donald Trump. Is that a boost for the coalition, do you think?
Not just a boost for a coalition, but it certainly reflects what I think the average person is thinking on the street. Peter's a very straight talker. Trump is a very straight talker. They've both got a focus on things like energy and a balanced energy mix. There's no ideology with Trump. It's just get it done. And Peter's more of a get it done guy than the Prime Minister is. What's
your take on that? So just to refresh people's memory, 47% in that survey today in the Freshwater poll suggested Peter Dutton would be better to deal with Donald Trump. 36% preferred Mr Albanese on that.
Well, Peter Dutton's obviously trying to copy aspects of Donald Trump's style. Peter Dutton is a bit like a Timu Donald Trump, the off-brand knockoff, trying to copy the same aspects but not quite bringing the same quality. I think the reality, though, is Australians know that on the world stage, which of these two leaders will enhance Australia's reputation. I mean, think about the runs that are on the board. During the last Liberal administration, the Liberals managed to offend our allies in the Pacific Islands. Peter Dutton himself made offensive comments about climate change. They managed to destroy a lot of our trading relationships, particularly our relationships with China. We all know what they did to the French. Compare that to Anthony Albanese on the world stage. Anthony Albanese has enhanced Australia's global standing. He's repaired our relationships with our Pacific neighbours. He has strengthened Australia's trading relationship with China, got those tariffs back down. And these are things that Australians benefit from very directly. So clear choice on the international stage between Peter Dutton and Anthony Albanese. I think Australians...
You can tell, so we're getting into that period where the government is going to target Mr Dutton relentlessly. Today, the Treasurer suggested he's guilty of reckless arrogance, and that won't translate well into foreign policy. How does he rebut this?
Can I just make one final point on what Andrew just said in terms of the Prime Minister? The Prime Minister had a chance to go and meet with Trump over the weekend. He said, I don't know if you've noticed, it's not on the map. Well, I don't know if you've noticed, mate, but the president of Argentina flew from Argentina, then up to Florida to meet with the future president, and then down to Peru for the meeting that everyone was attending. So it's quite possible to go a bit out of your way. And last time I looked, Florida, Peru isn't that far from each other. So he could have gone and actually tried to solidify the relationship between Australia and the United States, our most important strategic ally. In relation to what the Treasurer said today, I have never seen either recklessness nor arrogance from Peter Dutton, and I have known him for well over 20 years. He's not a reckless bloke. He's a very solid and methodical and planned and careful bloke. So it just seems that they're pulling words out of the blue to try and hope that something will stick. But anyone who's met the guy knows that it won't.
On a cost of living, that ad campaign Labor's launched, really trying to pin some of this blame to Mr Dutton. Will that stack up? Because people generally blame the government of the day when they're struggling, don't they?
Yeah, and that's understandable that people are struggling and they facing lots of cost of living pressures. I think everybody gets that. And, Peter Dutton, day after day, week after week, talks about the cost of living. Zoe comes on this show and talks about the cost of living. But what they don't tell you is that after they've spoken about the cost of living on a show like this, they then go into the Parliament and vote against the government's cost of living relief measures. They voted against cheaper childcare, they voted against cheaper medicines, they voted against some of the energy relief plan. So the point of this ad is to show Australians that despite all the talk from Peter Dutton about cost of living, the reality is, and his voting record shows, that they would be worse off with a Dutton government.
And at risk of proving Andrew's point, exactly, because at the moment, anyone who goes to see a GP in Australia is paying 45% more. So maybe we do go in and vote against your policies because they are not fixing or improving anyone's life at the coalface. Yes, I come in here and I talk about 10% increases in food and vegetables and 6% increase in education because you haven't done enough to bring down the prices. The one thing you did do is electricity down by 24%, and God knows it has saved your CPI figures. Yep. But the reality is people expected a $275 reset year on year of their energy bills, and they just haven't got it. All they've got is tokenistic handouts to get you guys to the next election.
Well, inflation was running at, as you well know, inflation was running at twice the level it is now when you were in government, and we've had to bring that inflation rate down. And remarkably, the government has been able to do that without smashing employment, without having a recession like they had in the UK and in New Zealand and in Japan. And so I think most Australians are thinking, well, we've reduced inflation by half while protecting employment in this country. that's a pretty good outcome from where we were when the baton that the Liberals had.
One of the challenges for the coalition remains those teal seats. Are you... I mean, obviously, some in the coalition very optimistic now looking at that poll, and there is a pathway, I think, that you could get to minority government, but then you'd need some of the teals potentially to come on board. Do you think that would happen?
Look, I still think the teal seats are very important for us. They have been seats that historically the Liberal Party has held for a very long time.
But if they come, you say it's minority government,
sure,
would they support you?
Oh, I think that's a question for the day. That hasn't been consistent with their voting record to date, which has largely been with either the government or with the Greens. But we live in hope. We will see what happens after the election.
We will indeed. Zoe?
Zoe's basically a teal within the Liberal Party. So I think
and you're a Liberal within the Labor Party, my friend, so touche.
So I think she's the best person to give advice on this.
Andrew Charlton from the Liberals, Zoe McKenzie from the Teals. Thanks so much. We'll see you next week.